So welcome to Belfast Rail. My name is Jonathan Watson, and today's guest is Agi Heale. Agi is a certified professional coach and certified neuro linguistic programming or NLP practitioner. She has coaching practices in London and Singapore. Agi helps her clients who are feeling overwhelmed cultivate a positive mindset to be calm and confident and make lasting changes for the better. She's written a book, Generation Panic: Simple and Empowering Techniques to Combat Anxiety, which is out now, if I'm right. And the book is published by O Books and is out in June 1st. So, Aggie, thanks very much for coming on.
You're welcome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Before we start, just want to say to anybody, if anyone's watching this and they suffer from anxiety themselves, or maybe they're not aware and they're watching this and they're kind of going, "What sounds a bit like myself," I do recommend anyone to reach out to their GP or qualified professional and do get help. Let's kick things off. What is Generation Panic and how did the book come about?
So I'll start with who Generation Panic are. And for me, it's that those group of people in their 20s and 30s who are ambitious, they're driven, rising talent. They're often kind of progressing quite fast in their careers and probably their personal lives as well. And yet they kind of get to this point where they're just so overwhelmed. They have anxiety as almost like an undercurrent. And through all that change, all that transition, it just becomes too overwhelming. But at the same time, they're like desperate to keep up. And like, I must show everyone that I've got everything completely sorted. And so I think it's just a very challenging time that Generation Panickers, as I like to call them, really struggle.
Yeah, because I think basically, like from my experience with anxiety, I would say for me it kind of started after I left secondary school. Again, I can bore people with long story, but secondary school for me was like hell. And I remember on the way going to the local college and I was getting the bus. And the bus I got on gradually filled up. And I always remember at a certain point I would struggle to breathe. And I remember it's almost like somebody actually had their hand in my throat. And I'd be sitting in the bus kind of going, coughing away and going, what's wrong with me? Didn't know what it was. And sometimes there was an overwhelming urge to just get off the bus. And again, I never drew the dots. And once I got off the bus, it magically disappeared. But I later found out that was like I was like a panic attack or anxiety attack. Basically, with yourself, I know in your book you mentioned about some of your own anxiety. Can you go in a bit about that?
Absolutely. And I think thank you for sharing that, Jonathan, because not dissimilar to me, I struggled as well. I started having these physical reactions and I had no idea what was happening. I was like, what on earth is happening in my body? And when I actually look back, I had those moments. I'd had a moment at school when I had struggled. I'd also had a point at university when I used to get into exams and just see black in front of me, which in itself is a type of anxiety. I just didn't know that. I was like, why on earth am I struggling so much? I don't get it. But for me, when it really kind of came alive was, so I was working in financial services recruitment in London, and on paper, I had everything, one version of success, everything that I thought that I wanted. So I was a director, I was managing 3 teams, I was earning great money, and I was also engaged to be married. And so on paper, it was like tick, 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 tick. But behind the scenes, exactly the same as you on the bus, I had such a physical reaction that completely knocked me for 6. Like I had no idea what was happening. And similar to you, I actually fled as well, which is so interesting. Now I've learned so much more about it with the fight, flight, or freeze response, which I can go into later if required. But for me, I was the same as you. I was trying to kind of work it out, like what is happening. I just need and want to get out of the situation as soon as possible. And my body just had a life of its own, which for me was terrifying. I was so scared. I had no idea. So yeah, not dissimilar to you on the bus. And I think we've all been through those experiences and not had the terminology or the words to be able to articulate what's happening.
It was something that never really, like growing up, thing you never heard about. I remember one time as a child, at the church my parents kind of went to. I remember there was a woman and she was unwell, and we were taking stuff to see her. And I remember hearing the word nervous breakdown. You never really understood what that meant. It just seen it as just it was almost seen as a weird illness, and you almost kind of got a vibe, because as a child you always pick up vibes from adults, that they didn't understand what it was. It was just nervous breakdown. Give them a few weeks, and there was nothing really. Never heard the word depression or anything like that there. And then as you get older, you start hearing it, and you kind of go, well, okay, and kind of starts to join the dots. Would you say now is a better time? Obviously, we're getting more of a handle on what this is, and on top of that, could you even go over the fight or flight response?
I think we're definitely getting a handle on it, and I think due to the last year, 18 months of incredible change, a lot of uncertainty and all the rest of it, anxiety is at the forefront of what people are talking about. You know, I now do executive and leadership coaching in corporates, and all of them are burnt out, they're exhausted, they're incredibly anxious. So it really is everywhere. And as a positive, that's kind of creating this amazing conversation, and people are much more willing to be open and vulnerable about the struggles that they've had, or it just feels a little bit more acceptable. And so now, actually, I would have thought if you today had walked into that church and found someone with a nervous breakdown, maybe you might realize that it was different, or what the true implications of that were. And even, I feel that even with anxiety, sitting here today, like I have so much more sympathy and understanding, obviously having been through it, but even just in broader context, that I think connects us all and makes us sympathize even better and have more empathy. So yes, very interesting times. It seems to be at kind of headline news almost in many ways.
No, definitely, because I mean, even growing up, like there was relatives who obviously, look, again, as a child, you're not taught this. You're kind of sort of observing. But I remember even like there's adults who in around me that I look back now, were suffering obviously from anxiety, from mental health issues, and pretty much I think the going treatment probably still today. It was pretty much, you seen them drinking, it was self-medication through alcohol, and then getting up the next day and rinse and repeat and back to work. Just if you explain the whole fight and flight response, maybe if some people have heard this before and know what it is, but for others they might not, and might be new to this concept of fight or flight.
Absolutely. So apologies if I'm teaching anyone to suck eggs, or it's kind of been said so many times before, but the fight, flight, or freeze response, as they've now added on to it, is quite an incredible physical response that we have to danger. And so it reverts back to our ancestors, the cavemen, who, when faced with a very real threat in front of them, such as a saber-toothed tiger or a poisonous berry, almost their kind of brains would shut down and they would react physically to keep them safe. So in that moment, when it senses the danger, a kind of concoction of hormones get released, and all this adrenaline and cortisol starts pumping around our body. And it means that we can fight the threat in front of us, we can flee to safety, or we can freeze and kind of almost make ourselves like a chameleon and try and blend in. So it's really amazing that our bodies can do that, and it can protect us and react so profoundly in a moment, because that means that you'll run faster when you see the tiger. The difficulty is that we are still reacting as though there's a tiger in front of us. and actually there's no tiger. So something like a meeting with a boss, or a podcast, or having dinner with friends, or meeting someone at 10 o'clock, whatever it might be, becomes outsized. It becomes so monumental because we're kind of processing it internally as though we have the tiger in front of us. And so we're then responding with this fight, flight, or freeze response. And ultimately, it's just not really serving us anymore. So much about this is kind of updating ourselves that we're okay, we're safe, and there isn't a tiger metaphorically in front of us. So kind of talk ourselves down from it almost, rewire.
Because it's like like our bodies are still a couple of million years, they're still sitting a couple of million years ago, but our technology, our society, our civilization has advanced. And as you said, we just we're confronted by different challenges now, and it's this mismatch, and I think there's also a lack of awareness for a lot of people that what way their body is. We walk about in this body. It's like driving the car about. You don't know how do you open your glove compartment. I don't know, or how do you apply the handbrake. I don't know. I've been driving it for years. I don't know. So it's really good. Because again, I don't mean to keep going back to stuff, but from my own experience, I've experienced that full spectrum of fight, flight, and freeze, and it's very interesting thing. I say that the freeze, it's like you turn to a statue, and you're like, what is this? And then the flight is obviously you feel this compulsive urge. I need to get out of here, and it's just uncontrollable. I need to get out. And then the fight, it again, it's like you go on autopilot, and someone's like you're just kind of watching this machine kind of do what it needs to do to get you out of harm's way. With yourself, again, I know in your book you mentioned that the book kind of came about from your own experiences, and these were from treatments or things that you'd tried, and so the book's kind of like a whittle down of what actually works. I'm just curious, what kind of treatments or what methods did you find didn't work with yourself, or didn't seem to provide what they were promised?
So for me, when I was really struggling, and exactly as you said, the kind of full 360 of fight, flight, or freeze, and that's very real for me as well. But during that time, I was so desperate to uphold that I was okay. You know, I barely told a soul that I was struggling. It was just my immediate family, my fiance. And I just searched high and low for like something that was just going to fix me. And so much of the advice was go and find, like a nice meditation app, or take some, deep breaths and all the rest of it. And for me, I just really struggled with that, because I was like, as soon as I try and sit still, my mind is running at a gazillion miles an hour. I can't seem to kind of get present and get in the moment. That was really challenging for me. And so I'd read, 350 pages or some theory paper, which I just didn't have even the headspace to kind of take it on in the first place. And so what Generation Panic is all about is that it has 44 different chapters with a number of different techniques within the chapters. And so it's about finding what works for you. Meditation and mindfulness is one of the chapters, but it is one out of the 44. There are 43 other chapters that might work far better for you. And the whole point of this is really about finding what works for you, and you're a complete individual, and something that will work for you incredibly well will be a train wreck for the other person. So yes, so much of it was about trying these different things or going down avenues and being like, that didn't really work for me. And essentially this is just a kind of collation of all of the information that I've learned from my own experience and since my coach training, and just general research, and kind of trying to find anything that would make me feel good.
Yeah, because I think one of the big problems, and again, this is from from observations I've seen with people. I know a lot of people who suffer with anxiety. I know people who are very capable. I've seen people who are very capable physically, like as a martial artist, and they've taken panic attacks, and they've literally had to just like sit down on the ground and try and bring everything back in. And often not, again, I'm not knocking or bashing the doctors, the GPs here. I think often not. I think the GPs are inundated with people with different ailments, stuff like that, and it's all too easy just to kind of go like take some prescription, which I'm sure helps. But with the anxiety and stuff like that, is it possible, or have you found it possible to get a permanent handle on it? That it's not as, it can start quite severe. Now when it comes up, you're able just to kind of like bat it off, or is it something that you kind of it's a constant battle with throughout your life?
So I'm happy that I'm walking proof of that ability to get a better handle on it, because since my panic attacks back in 2014, I haven't had one since. And
Okay.
yes, there are moments that I might feel more anxious, but what I feel from everything in Generation Panic is that I now have the tools to be able to work out, okay, so what do I need right now and what's going to make me feel better? Because anxiety in some ways can be a really good thing. It can make you feel sharper and more on point, and it motivates you, and it can make you work harder in a good way, like you might prepare more, for example. However, when it just tips over into being something more crippling, that's when it's just too much. You just can't handle it. And so I firmly believe, obviously completely biased, but with Generation Panic, that it really does give you all the tools and techniques that you can find for you that will work to make sure it is under control, that you have a good relationship to it, that you're not afraid of it. I was so scared of it. I was just so terrified every meeting or interaction that I was going into that I would have another panic attack. I don't have that thought anymore. I don't have that thought. If I start to feel more anxious, I'm like, what's going on here? Let's take a moment, stop, check in. And then I've got a number of different things that might change in any given moment of what I'll do to feel good again, like feel myself and kind of get back to center. Yeah. So yes, I firmly believe you can get a really good handle on it.
No, excellent. Because I think that's the important thing to kind of realize. And I think what I want to kind of like go back here with is anxiety is I think, especially in society, and I mean like some of the statistics, or the stats that when I was preparing for this interview, for example, in 2014 they were saying that 8.2 million cases of anxiety were recorded in the UK. 1 in 6 adults has had a common mental disorder in England. About 1 in 5 are women and 1 in 8 are men. From 2000 to 2014, rates of common mental health problems in England steadily increased in women and remained largely stable in men. I'd be suspicious that that's because guys you don't talk about it. It's viewed as you keep it yourself. The last one I'll read out here is in 2019 there were 5,691 suicides registered in England and Wales. Of these, 3/4 were among men, which has been the case since the mid-1990s. So obviously men are going more to like the extreme manifestors and going to suicide. So anxiety is obviously everybody's experienced it. It's a normal thing. It's not weakness. What again, just for anyone watching, what is some of the common symptoms of anxiety?
So it can vary from person to person, but for me personally, when I start to feel anxious, I can feel my heart rate increase, my stomach might drop out or kind of be doing somersaults, my palms might start to sweat. And for me, the biggest indicator that I'm feeling really anxious is that I suddenly go blank. Like I find it quite hard to pull my thoughts together or string together a coherent sentence. And everything just feels quite overwhelming. Even the simplest of decisions that are very obvious and kind of day to day suddenly just hold far more weight. But that, that can change. And one day I might just feel like a little bit more on edge, or my shoulders might fit a bit tighter. It can change, and almost the kind of degree or the variance of that can shift as well. But I think it's everywhere. And, just to speak to those statistics you've just mentioned, what I've loved most about writing this book is that I obviously speak about this so openly and have incredible conversations, but the amount of people who come up to me and like, do you know what, I've really struggled with that, or you've articulated how I feel, or it's so nice to know that I'm not on my own. This is absolutely everywhere. And I think that everyone struggles with anxiety in some way. It's just how much of a handle they have on it, or what tools do they have to be able to have a good relationship to it, rather than just being all consuming.
Definitely, because again, and I apologize for if you're tired of hearing me refer back to myself.
No worries. No, I love it. This is it. This is a normal conversation of we've both had experiences, and it's been hard, and there comes such kind of power in us sharing that story. Tell me more.
Because one of the things I had, and this is a few years ago, big into running, and I know at the time I was stressed and anxiety. But which is a bad thing, but what I'm very good at is burying that, pretty much put in the back of my mind, close the doors, padlock it, and get on with it. And when I was running, what I would get after the run would be like a tightness in my chest, and it would be like shooting pains in my heart. And then a couple of times I literally had to lie down to release this pain or pressure. I remember going to myself, what sat there? And I start, I think the worst thing to do is Google any symptoms, because it automatically points to exercise-induced angina. Yeah, Dr. Google. So long story short, I ended up going to see, I was taking part of my job was teaching like a spin class. In the middle of the spin class near the end, it was like my heart felt like it had been stabbed. And I remember just going, oh, okay. That was what made me go to the doctor. So it's been going on for a month. And I went to the doctors and basically did a ECG and was referred to see a cardiologist. Completely healthy, no issues. They had a wee thing in my heart that they see now and again. It says, look, if you're ever in for anything else, make sure you list it. And the first thing they said to me was, have you been stressed? Have you been on? And I had been, and that was what had been causing it. But for me, I thought it was something heart related, but just it manifests itself in my chest. So there's, from my humble experience, there's just one kind of symptom that can cause that you think, well, it's a bit more. Maybe in a way, it's a good thing that happened.
Yes, but also a really good example of how everyday experiences or things that might seem kind of small or insignificant actually build up. And I think I, the same as you, had missed all of those signs. So similarly, I'd got to that point with the panic attacks where my body just freaked out. Whereas up until that point, and I can spot it much easier now, like, okay, have I had a stressful week at work, or did I not sleep very well, or have I drunk more alcohol in the last few days, or have I don't know, felt on the back foot in some way in a friendship group? I don't know, whatever it might be. But so often we actually have so many signs, and particularly from our body. I would have thought that in the lead up to that, I mean, like you said, you had a few runs where you had to lie down even. Yeah. But it took you to you probably were just like, this is almost part of my run. Like, I love lying down on the floor. Yeah. This is like what I do. Yeah. And so it's the same, it's the absolute same that, it builds up over time. And so if anyone's listening, if you have something that's even just like a little tweak, something that just feels a bit off, but you've kind of brushed off and thought, I don't want to make a big deal out of it, or I'm sure it would just kind of get out of itself. I don't need to do anything. Actually, maybe that's your body is trying to tell you a message. And that's even one of the chapters, Your Body Speaks, and talking about how, as weird as it sounds, but if you actually pause for a moment and ask your body, like, what are you trying to tell me? If you could speak to me, what would you tell me? Yeah. It would have been interesting to have had that conversation with your body when you were lying on the floor
Yeah.
post run, and seeing what it came up with, because our body has so many messages and so much information for us.
Yeah, we're definitely, and again, for me now, again, I'm not saying I'm sitting perfect here, but I just take what you were saying at the start. When I feel like an anxiety attack coming on, it's a weird sensation. You can feel it coming, but it's almost like you've got like a fence, and it has to it's stopped. So you're kind of going, oh, okay, and you can kind of like handle it. So it's almost like you kind of it's wanting to take over, and you're going, oh, that's it's almost like you'll be able to sit down and talk to it, and it goes away. Which is weird, because I think that just comes with experience and awareness of what's happening. You're able to kind of manage it or bat it off as such. Whereas before, it just and it came, took over, and you're at its mercy. Continuing on, really, how important is it to go beyond your comfort zone in dealing with anxiety? Obviously, that sounds kind of counterintuitive in a way.
I love it. You're just leading into all the chapters of the book. So one of them is get out of your comfort zone. And when I wrote this chapter, I felt in a real, I felt torn, to be honest, between like what was my advice about it. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but there was a quote at the beginning of the chapter, which I think is to this chapter, which says, ships are safe in harbour, but that's not what ships are built for, by John Shedd. And that's kind of the same with us. You know, if we just stick in our comfort zone, we're not meant to just sit at home, keeping safe in this kind of cotton wool bubble. We're meant to be out. We're meant to be living. We're meant to be failing. We're meant to be making mistakes. And so the reason why it was such a kind of struggle for me is that on one hand, when I was really struggling, I didn't even have the energy. I was so kind of scared even stepping out to the front door, and it felt really overwhelming. And so I just genuinely wanted and needed to recharge my batteries. You know, I wanted to be able to sit in a place where I didn't feel that fight, flight, freeze response continuously, because it really does take it out of you. But in the same breath, you have to be challenging yourself a little bit. And actually, one of the best ways to get around anxiety is action and moving into action. There's a wonderful lady whose quote is, "Feel the fear and do it anyway." And I love that, because it's like you have to feel that feeling and feel safe enough to go and try it, and know that you've got a good enough support network or you've got good enough foundations. But it's challenging, I think, to find the right sweet spot, that you've got enough of the kind of recharging, restorative side and enough of the kind of going out of your comfort zone and pushing boundaries and trying new things or doing things that feel uncomfortable.
No, definitely, because I think that's one of the things that I think in today's society, it's very easy to kind of be, if you're going through this, is to be kind of, almost the danger thing is like you can be shielded permanently. So you're not, yes, you know what you're dealing with, mental health issues, anxiety, but you're never going to be challenged, because you can be, it's almost like you kind of think, like, this is what's wrong with you, but you're shielded by your employers are shielded, which is all good. It's good to have that kind of like stay home and if you need to kind of bring yourself back in again and get recharged. But you do, as you say, you need that kind of you need that to challenge yourself. And one of the great ones I learned was a book from a previous guest, Jeff Thompson. And when it was reading about Jeff Thompson, he was the first person that ever kind of in that position as a kind of a martial artist, that basically came out and said, sorry, I'm fixing the charger. He's the first person that came out and kind of said that he felt fear. And he talked about when he was really bad with depression and anxiety, he's almost scared to go out of the house. He even says he followed his wife about the house like a little puppy. And he ended up writing like a fear pyramid. I think the first one was like spiders and going to the dentist, and it went right up. And worked his way through. Um, what would be what would be your top three tips for managing anxiety? And what is 777 breathing?
So 777 breathing, which is perfect because it would absolutely be one of my top tips, is essentially when we are panicking, we breathe very high up in our chest. Our breath becomes even shallower, our chest becomes tighter, everything just gets more and more hunched. And what we want to encourage ourselves to do is to really push our breath right deep down into the nooks and crannies, all of those dark kind of caves of our tummy, and take in that new fresh air and take out that kind of stale, gross air that's I think is fueling anxiety. And there's been so many studies about the power of breathing, and actually it can really inform the rest of your body, how well you're feeling. So if you can control your breathing, it has a direct impact on your heart rate, and in turn that sends messages to the rest of your body that you're okay, that you're safe. And so 777 is just counting in for 7, holding for 7, breathing out for 7. And I remember when I first started, I would honestly be able to do like 111. I was like, oh my God, this is impossible. This is so hard. But with practice, it's like going to the gym or something. Day one, it feels really challenging. But if you can continue to go back and keep doing it, it is just so powerful. And this sounds very obvious, but breathing you have with you everywhere. You don't need to, change your body or move about. Even if you're in a really big meeting and you need to be kind of present in the moment, actually some deep breaths you can do with no one knowing, and you're not kind of distracted. You can still be in the moment. You're not having to access, I don't know, visualization or something.
So the 7. So is it like 7 deep breaths in? Is it? What way is it?
No, so breathe in for 7 seconds or 7 counts.
Okay.
You can make the 7 counts as fast or as slow as you want, but just breathe in for 7, hold it for 7, breathe out for 7. But if it works for you, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. I spoke to someone yesterday who was like, I love 5, 5, 5. That's my thing. I'm like, great. If that makes you feel calmer and more in control. I like to think of it as though your breathing and your heart, which is just so closely linked, are almost like a captain of a ship. And if the captain of the ship is having a complete meltdown, the rest of the body will follow. It won't have a direction. It will steer in crazy, crazy ways. Whereas if you can calm your heart, your breathing, the captain, it informs the rest of the crew. It ensures the rest of the ship is okay, and it can kind of calm and just move more peacefully through its day.
Yeah, that's great. That's, as you say, that's something that you could take pretty much anywhere, even before going in for maybe a job interview or getting called into the manager's office or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Which actually would probably lead very nicely onto my second tip, which is talking about the power of our bodies, and kind of building on what we were talking about earlier, of even talking to your body and understanding the messages that it's telling you, but also changing it. Amy Cuddy has done this exceptional TED talk on the power of your body, and how if you can construct these poses, it can change the way that you feel about something. So even, for example, if you think of Usain Bolt passing the finish line, or you passing the finish line, you would probably thrust your hands up in the air, or thinking about Superwoman or Superman, hands on his hips and really strong. Yeah. And that's something else you can do before a big meeting, before anything that might make you feel on the back edge. Go to the toilet beforehand and just stand confidently and take those deep breaths and really kind of connect with your body rather than jump straight up into our head. Because our body is, it carries us around all day, and we're just so disconnected from it. We just live up in our heads, and all the worry just sits up here, and we forget about the rest of us. So yes, connect with your body. And my third top tip today would probably be to find your support network, because even like the was it Jeff who was just on the show?
Jeff Thompson, yeah.
Yeah. So even like he said that he obviously was hanging around his wife, kind of on her tails.
Yeah.
And that's a good example. I bet that his wife probably was very supportive, but also kind of challenged him as well. And finding those people who are like truly in your corner, like know who you are, know what you're all about, and prepared to give you a bit of leeway, but also kind of be like, come on, you can do this. Like, come on, Jonathan, get out there and go. Because for me personally, I remember just feeling so lonely, and like everyone else had everything put together and I was the only one in the whole world who was struggling. And if I had just called upon my friends or that support network more, I think I would have found it a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think it's good to have that kind of the right people around you who, as you said, will support you. Whereas if you have a group of people around you who are kind of fanning the flames of like anxiety or mental health issues, then you're not gonna get any better. And I think the point you made about being in tune with your body, like that sounds obvious, but actually, we don't do it. We're very when you get up until you go to bed, especially now in today's world, your focus is directed outwards. You're not really tuned in. You're getting up. I have to get the kids ready, get them to school, go to work. I have that to do. I have this to do. And I get home, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and then then before you're knackered, you're back in the bed again, and it's wins and repeating. What kind of wee thing would you have that would help you kind of get tuned into what's going on inside your body? Is there any wee tips that you could give yourself that you use, maybe?
A number of different things. The first thing that jumped to mind is having reminders, because like you say, we are living in very fast times. You know, we've got a lot on our to-do list and we're running from thing to thing with demands and emails coming in and social media. You know, there's just a lot going on. And so for me, I find it particularly helpful when I have reminders, and whether that's like an alarm on my phone that goes off that says like, take a deep breath, or just remember to connect with your body, or what's your body saying, or perhaps even like an object. I think I drive my husband nuts. I often have like sticky post-it notes all over our kind of where we brush our teeth, and because the intention is often there to do it, but the actual reality of stopping and checking is hard, and it's just building a habit. And interestingly, what happens often is that when people start to get more of a handle on their anxiety, they stop doing the things as much. You know, they stop the check-ins, or they're like, oh, I don't have time for that today, or, you know, it's just on to the next. I feel good. You know, I don't need to, continue doing X. But actually, that's why the reminders are so important, because it really does need your continuous focus. Like it's a continuous, you really have to commit to having a good relationship to anxiety. You know, it just doesn't happen by chance. There are practical things that you need to change and do differently, but also revisit and reconsider. So reminders would probably be the most obvious way. Okay. Well, yeah. Definitely what I do.
No, because I think it is very easy. It's the same with if you take it in like a physical sense. If you hurt your knee and you go and see a physio, and the physio, here's a few exercises that will help you get back to where you are. A lot of people, and we're all guilty of it, we do it for a while and we'll go, oh, my knee's a lot better now. And then before you know it, it's yes, you fixed the problem, but you haven't addressed the bigger issue. And then before you know it, you're back to square one again, maybe even worse often than you were last time. And I suppose that's the same for anxiety. You crash into this, or this crashes into you. You then get help, run through it, and then before you go, oh, I feel great, and then it can come back bigger and stronger. Obviously, going back to your book, who is George and Polly?
So George and Polly. So throughout Generation Panic, for every chapter that's in there, I have these two little egg-like characters who are little illustrations, little caricatures that join us on our journey. And I work with a wonderful illustrator called Millie Baring, who brought George and Polly to life. And what I love about them is that they kind of represent the fragility and the kind of I can't even think what the word is, but the eggs can be so precious and can crack so easily and kind of spill out, but they can also be quite hard and strong. And yeah, it's just a reminder for me that, regardless of what front you see on people or how they're coming across, there's fragility to all of us. And, we can all be held lightly, but yes, for me, I love them. They just bring a bit of lightness to the book. It can all feel so heavy when we talk about anxiety, and this should be a really positive and exciting book for any reader and something that they enjoy going through. And so hopefully George and Polly will accompany them on their journey and make them feel good.
No, excellent. There's part of the book which I find just really interesting. I've came across this before, and I really like this. In the circle of influence, what is radiators and what drainers?
I nearly talked about this earlier, actually, when you were just talking about kind of friendship groups. And that is so radiators and drainers, to kind of step back a little bit and explain, is those people in your life who just drain you. They kind of suck out all that energy, and you actually leave your interactions just feeling crappier. You just don't feel as good. They've kind of taken stuff away from you. And on the flip side, you have radiators, the ones who like boost you up. They might be a kind of cheerleader for you, or just support you, even if it's hard conversations, or not kind of, it's not about being Pollyanna or kind of positive all the time. It's about having real conversations. But overall, it's a real like boost. They kind of, literally like the sun, they kind of radiate out that like light and happiness. And so one of the chapters on the book is exactly that, of just really working out and sitting down and thinking, where do I spend my time? And who, as a general gist, am I investing my time with? And is it actually working for me? Because quite often I think people can get caught or sucked into friendship groups or interactions, even at work or just in your broader network, that actually don't really serve you anymore. And that can have a huge impact on your anxiety for many reasons, whether it's, I don't know, they put you down, or you just feel out of your depth, or they don't feel like they've got the same kind of interests. So a huge part is being able to kind of really work out, okay, so where am I spending my time, and is it working or is it not?
Yeah.
So radiators and drainers.
Yeah, because I think sometimes, if like kind of a broad sense here, we're talking about mental health, if people maybe have anxiety or mental health issues, sometimes they feel maybe the group that they're in, but things that they know maybe deep down that these people around aren't great people. It sounds terrible to say it, but they're not great. Maybe they're happily on a downward spiral of maybe not positive mindset, but the person, maybe individual, feels that, well, if I leave, they'll be, yes, this group isn't great. I don't like these people's company, but life will be worse on my own. There's that kind of fear. So it's kind of like a kind of a perpetual vicious circle where they're kind of trapped. So I think that's something I've seen, and I think it's important to kind of, if you are stuck in that actually staying in that group long term is going to do a lot more harm than making that scary leap of faith. So there's
yes, and even if you're able to kind of step back and think, 5 years from now, if I continued spending my time with these people, where would I be? And although it might feel hard, and it will be hard, like I'm not even trying to dress it up, it would be challenging to change that. But I think when you're feeling good and you're kind of with the right people, you start to radiate yourself. You become more magnetic. People of the right kind of tribe, the right energy will kind of come together. And you know, there's so many people, there's so many people out there. I mean, you're going to find someone. It's just the first step. And yeah, the first step is often the hardest. It can be the absolute worst. So working out if you do have radiators in your life, or broader people who might support you, whether that's someone at work or a distant family member or a close family member, a coach, a mentor, you know, whoever it might be, use them as to lean on as you make those changes, as you begin to step out. I guarantee it will benefit you long term. Short term pain, long term gain, I think.
Definitely, because I think some drainers or people who would drain you, they're quite happy to dampen other people down. They don't want them to shine. So any kind of like that person maybe achieve something, they're quick, as you said, they're quick to come in and suck the life, like switch it into a negative and go, well, it could have went this way, and you got lucky. And there's been again loads of examples that there was one guy I was reading about, and he was a writer, and he got his first book published, and his so-called friend, which would fit this definition of drainer, turned to him and said, well, you got lucky. Next time, next, like, don't be thinking about writing another book. That was a lucky break. You won't be any more. Which is quite nasty. It's like trying to.
He sounds like a delightful friend.
Yeah. I remember reading that in the person's autobiography.
I think that's it, though. Sorry, I think deep down, if we had that person here in this conversation now, and we said, you know, like in your real core, like in your gut, in your heart of hearts, are they really that right person for you? And I think that's an opportunity for you to be honest, to be like, actually, maybe they don't serve me anymore. Maybe they were a good friend for this time, and that was where our friendship was born. But you know, things change. You change. Yeah. We change.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think there's another quote that I hear all the time, which is "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future," which is so true. I think Dan Pena says that. I'm not a big fan of him, but it's a very good quote, and it's very true. So it is. Going into obviously influences and stuff like that. Social media plays a huge part in our lives today. What impact has it had on anxiety, especially amongst younger people? Because I know there was a study done. I apologize if I forget the people who did the study, but they had a correlation between children's mental health and the decline in that, with the rise and increase of social media in the past. I think in the past decade. So what kind of impact has this had that you've maybe seen or came across?
I think it's had a monumental impact, and I don't think we're even really understanding the effects of it to the extent that it is. So even just on a personal level, you know, social media is hard. You see people online who are putting out their kind of best versions of themselves, and I think that creates a feeling of insecurity. It can create a feeling of FOMO, and everything almost becomes kind of graded. It's all kind of a competition between other people. And social media additionally is 24/7. You know, that how many people do you know on social media who just say for 365 days, do you know what, I'm just lying on my bed today because whatever. You know, people need to see, or essentially people just want to be seen. And I think social media is an incredibly worrying phenomenon that we're facing. And you know, even for myself, one of my biggest struggles is my phone. You know, like I constantly have my phone on me. Not help that in Singapore at the moment we have to check in and out and everything on our phone, but it's really no excuse. And that kind of dependency on it and the social media that happens with that is unhealthy. I just don't think it feeds the best part of me. And you know, on a personal level, if I'm feeling anxious, take my phone away. That's the easiest way. I'm not connected. I don't have emails or messages coming through. I don't have social media. I often go through like deleting all my apps. So yes, I think it's a very real problem. And I mean, God knows where we're all going to end up. Who knows?
Yeah, because I think the the people who create social media, they don't like it's very well reported that a lot of them do not have let their children on it. They keep their kids well away from it. They're fully aware of the dangers. We want to draw an equivalent. It'd be like the tobacco companies, the executives of the tobacco companies, telling their kids don't smoke, definitely don't touch that. But here keep selling it. I think that with social media, that you're right. There's you see a lot of one of the telling things I've noticed more is people photoshopping themselves more, putting filters on. I've seen a massive increase of that. I've even seen guys using it. This has been a bit shocker. And there's very much people kind of almost like their own, they become their own celebrity version of themselves, and it's all carefully manicured posts. Pictures are all carefully supervised, and people taking a bit more like being more risky with posts, and then obviously you've got it's a political quagmire as well. So I think maybe it's a technology that I think we weren't ready for. I think maybe that's speaking for myself as well. I think we're all kind of we need more work on ourselves before we embrace social media. Because I think if you see a few individuals who I would say are well rounded, that they know what inside as well as outside, and you can see the difference between what they put up to the other stuff as well. So it's a contrast. What if you were put you on the spot here? What would be your recommendation if it would obviously just try and limit your time on it?
So even personally, things that I've done is just first of all have an awareness. So like I tracked how often I was using my phone and when I was picking it up. And then also put in the place the boundaries that are going to work for you. So whatever they are for you, making sure that you stick to them and that you have the reminders that if you go to pick up your phone, even making it harder. I went through a time when I would always put it like in a pouch and have a sticker on it being like, do I even need to pick this up? So, I mean, it can be something as silly or as small as that might not work for someone else, but for me I was like, do I actually need to pick this up, or is this kind of mindless? It's I hope that's kind of answered your question. I think it's a real problem, and you're right. I think have you watched The Social Dilemma? Did you see that?
Yes.
So just from the way you were just talking, but what's so sad about it is that everything was created, well, as they're saying now, and I believe them, like everything was created with such good positive intention, and it's just become so negative. And that's almost like the kind of radiator drainer. Actually, if this is now draining your energy, it doesn't make you feel good, you waste time scrolling, and you're not doing something that's more fulfilling and making you feel good about yourself, then that's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I think again, going back to documentary, and I've seen it myself. You can see even some of the big corporations deliberately putting posts on to provoke, because they know well, if we put this controversial post up, these are all be at each other's throats, and again that's everyone being at each other's, everybody being polarized and then at each other's throats. They can then go to the companies and go, look at our footfall here, our digital click-ons. We've got thousands of people advertise, and we'll stick an advertisement while they're all fighting over whatever political quagmire they've got involved in. They'll stick, buy these shoes or buy this car in the middle of it all. And I think that's the sad thing. I mean, I set up a Twitter account and then I closed it down because Twitter is just a horrible. Maybe originated again, as you're saying there, the idea for it was noble and a positive one, but you often hear a lot of people saying Twitter is just this endless fight, people fighting each other and sniping comments. And
to me it just doesn't make me feel good. Like I would see comments that are just so cruel, like they're so.
Again, apologies to everybody watching now. We have a bit of a technical fault on my end. You have a practice, as I mentioned at the start, in London and Singapore. I'm just curious, is there a difference between East and West with regards to anxiety and the root causes?
I don't know whether as yet there's a difference between East and West in terms of specifically anxiety. There is absolutely cultural differences. You know, for example, over in Asia, people are less willing to speak up, or they don't want to put their kind of head up in some way. You know, even over in Asia, in Australia, the tall poppy syndrome, they just like slice it down as soon as a head comes up. So I think that is something that's very real for a lot of my clients here on the ground in Singapore. But overall, I believe it's kind of universal. I mean, everyone's facing their own struggles. We're all facing a pandemic, which is, you know, mind-blowing in terms of the change that we've all faced. And anxiety just seems to be everywhere. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, no, because it was just something I thought deep down. Is there what kind of, if there was a difference, what would that be? So no, that's interesting.
Maybe that should be my next research project or something. That
Yeah,
could be my focus to go find out.
because I think from and from my kind of perspective, and it's almost, I think, from the west looking towards the east. Sometimes I think we maybe, as I say, we kind of think the view is that they're maybe a bit more resilient or hardy as such. But as you said, I think as you pointed out there, it's probably just a case that, well, again, but like what we were maybe a few decades ago, you don't talk about, or quietly deal with that at your own time in your own house. We don't want to know. So that's interesting. Um,
Oh, sorry.
no, sorry, continue. Sorry.
I was just going to say it is changed. So we've been in Singapore for 3.5 years, and even now the types of conversations that I'm having with clients and corporates as a whole has shifted. You know, people are talking about it more openly, particularly with the pandemic. It's, if in anything, it's done a good thing for anxiety in terms of the conversations we're having, not in terms of how people might be feeling. But it is definitely more spoken about, and a real focus for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because you often see those like those clips of workers in Japan falling asleep on the trains, and I think it was, I don't know how true I said. I think I heard a like urban myth probably from our end. Was that if you fall asleep and work in Japan, your boss thinks that's great because you've worked that hard, you've passed the goal. Whereas here you would get sacked.
I
So
love that. Maybe they're like popping open the champagne or opening the sake or something. You know,
yeah,
great, you've passed out, you've succeeded.
but no, no, I think that's great. And I think the conversation we're having today, I think that uh, it brings it more to the fore, and hopefully by anyone watching this, they'll realise that's not something to be ashamed of. It's just it's I think it's just hopefully help you make more aware of what's happening, your own understanding with anxiety, and then hopefully be able to then manage that better, so you can get more from your life. What was reaching the end? Yeah. Uh, Aggie, what would be your mission statement?
Oh, my mission statement. So for me, in relation to Generation Panic, what my mission.
Hello.
Hi, Jonathan, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I think it's an internet connection issue. Sorry.
Don't worry. I was probably at a really important point. Where did I get to?
Um, you're
Like,
just
my
stuck.
mission statement is
Yes, yeah.
crash.
Correct.
Maybe that's it. It will just be out in the ether forever. No one will ever know. For Generation Panic, my dream, my hope is that it will be everywhere. You know, like I could walk into your house tomorrow, I could walk into Joe Bloggs's or, you know, whoever, and they would have a very well thumbed, well loved book that had genuinely been used to feel just happier and easier. So quite simply, my mission is to make people feel happier. I mean, it's that simple. And to know that there's very easy things that you can do to feel good. You know, if the world was a little bit happier and a little bit kinder, job done. I could die very happy.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, um, hopefully, I said because I found the book was great, and it ties a lot of stuff in. And I do again recommend this to anybody that, if you're watching this and you're plagued with anxiety, at least pick up the book, and take a deep dive into it, and don't just read, but again, the message I always try and put is implement, because I think we're too used to reading. Oh, that's a nice idea. Put that on the shelf, and you're still, but actually use what's in the book. Again, the same with the earlier analogy of physio. Physio gives you a couple of exercises. You need these to get to where you want to get to. And I think the exercises in the book do the same thing. If you want to get back to more being in control, because anxiety, you don't feel you're in control. You're plagued by an entity. It's kind of like, well, try this button, try this button. So hopefully that'll help. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, or get more information, where can they reach you?
Yes, please do get in touch. The irony, though, on social media.
Yes,
that's the problem. That's the problem. Anyway, you can definitely get in touch. So there's a website, generationpanic.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. So find me. It's Agi Heale, Agiheale. I'm pretty easy to find. There's not too many Aggies out there in the world. So yeah, would love to hear from you and hear your stories and what you do, and hopefully how much you love the book and have found it so practical and something that you can return to again and again.
That's great. Agi, thank you very much. And thanks so much for your time. And I really enjoyed this. It was a topic I was really interested in. And hopefully anyone watching this will get something from it. But thank you very much for your time and sharing your knowledge.
Ditto. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your stories as well, because that's what it's really all about. So yeah, I really appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
No, thank you.